I had been living abroad, relying on my husband's savings, and even splurged on a luxury car worth $10 million. At my brother's memorial service, my sister-in-law arrogantly declared in front of our parents and relatives, "From now on, I'll be living off the life insurance and survivor benefits." I couldn't help but laugh at her smug expression. Oh, my laughter caught everyone off guard, and soon my parents and relatives joined in, chuckling. Confused and embarrassed, my sister-in-law turned bright red and demanded, "What's so funny?" Still laughing, I replied, "You spent all of my brother's savings, didn't you? My deepest condolences." "What?" She stared at me, utterly bewildered, as I revealed the truth she had been unaware of. My name is Ethan, a 28-year-old ordinary office worker at a mid-sized company, living alone and enjoying life. I had a brother, Caleb, who was 4 years older than me. He was a bit timid but incredibly kind, always looking out for me. Caleb was a good man and excelled in his studies, eventually graduating from a prestigious university and landing a job at a top company. When he started working, he moved out, but he still sent money to our parents to support them and gave me gifts on my birthday. We didn't see each other as often, but I loved my brother, and we jokingly compete over who would get married first. However, after turning 30, my kind-hearted brother suddenly stopped providing financial support to our parents. Our parents, never having asked for the support in the first place, didn't question him. They assumed he must have needed the money for something important. I was a bit concerned and reached out to him, but he just reassured me, saying, "Everything's fine, there's nothing to worry about." A year after the financial support stopped, my brother introduced us to his fiancée, Olivia, who worked at one of his company's subsidiaries. Caleb was considered a rising star at his company, quickly climbing the ranks among his peers. But I felt uneasy around Olivia, who spoke in a sugary sweet tone. It seemed like she was more interested in his rising career than in him as a person. As far as I knew, Caleb had little experience with women. I was worried, but seeing his happiness, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Despite my concerns, Caleb married Olivia. I occasionally received messages full of affection from him, so I assumed they were happy. But after just 6 months of marriage, something troubling began to surface. My brother asked me for a loan. "Ethan, I'm sorry to bother you, but could you lend me some money? I need to cover an expense at work temporarily, but I don't have any cash on hand. I'll pay you back as soon as I'm reimbursed." It was shocking to hear my usually cautious brother say he was out of money. "I'm sorry, Caleb, but I'm in a tight spot myself right now." "That's okay, don't worry about it. Sorry for asking out of the blue. I'll figure something out." As soon as we hung up, I called home. "Hey, Mom, has Caleb been in touch with you recently?" "In touch? Did he ask you for money too, Ethan?" "What? He asked you and Dad as well?" "Yes, he's been calling us occasionally, asking if we could return any of the money he'd given us or lend him a little. It's really unlike Caleb to do that. Your dad and I have been talking about how strange it is. That's worrying. I wonder what's going on with him. We're planning to talk to him soon. Will you come, Ethan?" "Of course, just let me know when." And so a family meeting was arranged. On the day of the discussion, Caleb looked startled to see me at our parents' house. "Why is Ethan here?" "Well, whatever. So how much can you lend me?" he cautiously asked our parents. "Caleb, you've always been so careful with money. What's happened that you're even asking your sister for a loan?" Caleb's face darkened at our father's words. "If you're not going to help me, I'm leaving." "Wait, we're not finished talking. There's nothing more to discuss. Just leave me alone." Ignoring our father's pleas, Caleb stormed out of the house. I had never seen my brother so angry, and Mom and I were left speechless. I was worried about how pale he looked after all this time, but he wouldn't answer my calls. A while after that conversation, we got a call saying Caleb had collapsed at work. When we rushed to the hospital, we found him unconscious, hooked up to several tubes, looking even paler than before. Olivia was there too, perfectly made up and wearing designer clothes, despite supposedly rushing over. The doctor informed us that Caleb had terminal cancer and there was nothing more they could do. Upon hearing the news, Olivia burst into loud sobs. My brother was admitted to the hospital, and as soon as our parents left the room to prepare for his stay, Olivia turned to me. "I'm too busy to take care of him. You handle it." The tears she had just shed seemed to vanish instantly, as if they were never there. As I stood there stunned, Olivia continued, her tone growing more irritated. It's really inconvenient for him to have terminal cancer when I still need him to bring in money. Don't bother contacting me unless he's about to die. With those cruel words, Olivia left the room. I was still reeling from the shock when my brother's voice broke the silence. Ethan, I'm sorry. I turned to see that my brother, who I thought was asleep, was awake. Big brother, when did you wake up? When Dad and Mom left. What you just saw, that's the real Olivia. She's only interested in spending money, and she sees me as nothing more than a source of income. So that's why you were struggling financially. I was thrilled when someone so glamorous showed interest in me. Even after I realized what she was really like, I couldn't let go because I was too infatuated. And now this is where it's led me. I'm truly sorry for dragging you into this. Don't apologize, big brother. I was at a loss for words, unable to find anything that could comfort him. After a long silence, Caleb spoke again, his voice steady and determined. Ethan, I can't die like this. I need your help. His eyes were filled with resolve. I took caregiver leave and arranged to work remotely, coordinating with my parents to care for my brother in the hospital. As the weeks passed, Caleb grew weaker, but we cherished the peaceful moments together, taking walks in his wheelchair when he felt well and watching movies to pass the time. Those moments, I believe, helped me come to terms with his impending loss. Less than 2 months after his admission, Caleb's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse, and he passed away. Olivia hadn't visited him even once after that first day in the hospital. Even when his condition rapidly deteriorated, she ignored our calls. When I finally reached her after his death, her response was disturbingly casual, almost pleased. Oh, really? I understand. In the days that followed, as we prepared for the wake and funeral, Olivia remained absent. However, she made a dramatic appearance at the funeral, crying loudly and declaring herself the family representative, as if she had been by his side all along. If only I had noticed his illness sooner. I went to the hospital every day and cared for my husband. I wanted to support him even more, she sobbed, clutching my brother's portrait and speaking through her tears. Anger welled up inside me as I watched her performance, but I held it in, knowing it wasn't the time to react. Our parents and relatives who knew the truth looked at Olivia in disbelief. After the funeral, Olivia approached my parents and me. I'll be filing the divorce papers tomorrow. We'll be strangers, so don't contact me again. You can do whatever you want with the ashes and the grave. It's none of my concern. But my husband's entire inheritance is mine, so don't even think about contesting it, she said, delivering her message without a hint of emotion before quickly leaving. We were too stunned to be angry. Just a little more patience, Dad muttered, and Mom and I nodded in agreement. Time flew by, and soon the day of Caleb's memorial service arrived. Even though Olivia had told us not to contact her, I sent her a message anyway. As our relatives gathered at our family home, reminiscing about Caleb, a luxury car pulled up outside. Curious, I looked out and saw Olivia, stepping out in a flashy suit and carrying a designer bag. Without hesitation, she entered the house and immediately began boasting. I've been on a heartbroken trip abroad. First-class flights and luxury hotels. It was all amazing. I couldn't hide my displeasure, but Olivia continued oblivious. He always told me to save money because he had none, but he was secretly saving. I used all of that money to buy that car. A $10 million luxury car. You must be jealous. Olivia, why are you here today? If you're just here to brag, take it elsewhere, Mom said, her voice calm and devoid of emotion. Oh, Ethan was the one who contacted me, even though I told him not to, Olivia said, throwing a glance my way before turning her attention back to Mom. But I'm here for a reason. I plan to live off the survivor benefits and life insurance, but I need some documents for the application. I'd like you to handle that for me, she added with a smug expression, holding out a paper detailing the insurance application process. What nerve! She had made it clear she didn't want us involved, yet now she wanted to use us for her convenience. I felt a surge of anger, but instead of lashing out, I found myself laughing. Laughter. Soon my parents and relatives joined in, filling the room with laughter. Olivia, completely confused, turned bright red and screamed, "What's so funny? Why are you laughing?" I managed to stifle my laughter long enough to respond. You spent my brother's savings, didn't you? My condolences. Did you what? My condolences, Olivia stammered, her confidence faltering. Yes, condolences. You see, my brother had debts, and I imagine the interest has piled up nicely by now. Oh, and by the way, the beneficiary of the life insurance, that was changed to me a long time ago. What? Wait, what do you mean? Watching Olivia's panic, I almost laughed again but held it back as I continued. My brother told me everything. How you demanded he work harder, how you belittled him, how you never lifted a finger around the house and spent all your time out, and how you abandoned him the moment he got sick. He resented you deeply. Do you really think he'd leave any money to someone he resented? I stared directly into Olivia's eyes, which were now filled with rage. I took out loans in my brother's name at his request. Since he worked for a major company, he could borrow a substantial amount, and we used that money to cover his hospital bills and funeral expenses. Thanks to that, he was comfortable in a private room, and we gave him a top-tier funeral. And as for the life insurance, my brother changed the beneficiary to me the moment he saw your true colors. That's a lie. It has to be. There's no way I'd fall for such a lie. Olivia's beautiful face contorted in anger as she glared at me, her voice rising in desperation. If you think it's a lie, why don't we check for yourself? I replied calmly, knowing full well the truth would soon dawn on her. Realizing from my unwavering demeanor that this was no bluff, Olivia let out a shrill scream. I'll renounce the inheritance. I don't want the debt. That won't be possible, one of our relatives, a cousin, interjected with a composed tone. You've already accessed Caleb's inheritance. This will be seen as an intention to inherit, so you can't just renounce it now. Olivia snapped back at the cousin, trying to defend herself, but the fight drained from her when she saw the business card handed to her. A lawyer? Indeed, our family had a cousin who was a lawyer. Caleb had been in contact with him, making sure Olivia touched his inheritance before learning about the debt. My brother had carefully timed everything, thinking through every detail. Olivia slumped to the floor, her bravado gone. She looked up at me, desperation in her eyes, and clung to my leg. Hey, you're his brother, so you're like my brother too, right? You should help me pay off this debt. We're family after all. What? What are you talking about? I recoiled in disgust. If you filed the divorce papers, then you and I are nothing but strangers. I have no obligation to help a stranger with her debt. My sharp tone cut through her pleading. Oh, and the apartment you're living in. That's in my dad's name, so you'll need to vacate it as soon as possible. I added, delivering the final blow before walking away, leaving her in stunned silence. Despite Olivia's protests, our relatives soon escorted her out of the house. After the memorial service, Olivia began calling me in our family home incessantly, begging for help. She was drowning in debt and facing inheritance taxes she couldn't afford. She sold her $10 million luxury car and all the brand name items she had ordered to cover the costs, but it wasn't enough. At first, I found her desperation somewhat satisfying and even answered her calls, but it quickly became a nuisance. When I finally threatened to report her to the police if she continued, the calls stopped immediately. Olivia also refused to leave the apartment, so we served her an eviction notice through our lawyer cousin. When he reached out to her, she begged for mercy, but he firmly refused, warning her that any further harassment would result in legal action. Reluctantly, she moved out. Later, a relative informed me that they had seen Olivia entering a sleazy establishment rumored to offer questionable services. She looked haggard, her once beautiful appearance now faded, and it was clear she wasn't living a decent life. I stood before my brother's memorial tablet, hands together in prayer. Brother, your final act of revenge was a success. A sense of relief washed over me, knowing I had honored my beloved brother's wishes.